Board members or homeowners look to the board for leadership, okay? We all agree the homeowners probably don't want to be on the board, right? And they're going to hold you to the highest possible standard, right? If you are on the board, even though you're a volunteer. And you know, when you sign up to be on the board, I hate to say it, but you kind of do sign up for that, right? When I got back on my board, my husband said, "Why are you doing that?" And I said to him, because nobody else will do it, and because there's nobody who can get things done. Things are starting to fall apart at our association, and I can't live like this. I don't want to look at our front entrance looking horrible. And so I had a reason to get on the board. I wanted to get things looking nice again. I wanted to feel good about my neighborhood when I drive in every night after work. And so, but I also need to be a leader if I serve on my board. And as owners want the association to run like a business and to protect what might be their largest asset that they own. I feel funny saying this because 90% of the boards that we work with are super professional, are in it for the right reason, treat people with respect. But there's always an element of sometimes there's some bad boards, or maybe sometimes there's one bad board member, right, that is disrespectful of owners or isn't nice. And so just a friendly reminder, even though we're not paid and this is a volunteer job, we still have to run this like a business and follow corporate formalities. We also have to act in a professional manner. Even when people come to the meeting and aren't professional to us, we still need to be the voice of reason. We still need to be nice. We still need to try to help them if we can. Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of what are our responsibilities when we get elected to the board. First, you need to play a participatory role. On my board right now, I hate to keep bringing up my board. They're not here, by the way. But we have one board member who just doesn't always show. And it really gets annoying because we had a contested election. We had another candidate that I think would have come to the meetings if she had been elected. So, you know, responsibility number one, please participate. If you're elected to the board, please come to the board meetings. Please respond when there are emergencies. Please help us by stepping up to take on a role that you may have some special expertise in. That's why you got elected to the board. Understand and be in compliance with the governing documents. One of the first things you should do if you're elected to your board is have a binder made with all of the governing documents for your association. And just scan through them quickly, read them, understand what each set of documents' role is, right? And generally understand what they say, or at least know where to look if a question comes up. Adhering to your fiduciary duty to the association. This is a tough one. This is the one that's it's hard to define it. Here's how the law defines it. The law says that you have a fiduciary duty to act in the best interests of your association in all your dealings as a board member. So when you're making decisions, you need to be thinking what's best for the association, not what's best for Beth Mulcahy, what's best for the association. And the law gives you kind of a, lawyers, they write these laws. So, you have a duty to avoid conflicts of interest. You have a duty of confidentiality. And you have a basic underlying fiduciary duty to act in the best interests of the association. You have to place the interests of the association above your own. You have to oversee and treat association services and facilities like a business. So I had a luncheon today for many neighborhood leaders that run these classes. And one of the things that came up, somebody came up to me at the end of the luncheon today and said, "Can I ask you a personal question?" I said, "Sure." It's not like divorce or one of those, right? It's HOA. She said, "Yes." And she said, "My association is not treating our association matters as a business." She said, "I'm not on my board, but I know better." She said that we had failed to maintain a portion of our association's common areas, and due to that failure to maintain, our insurance was canceled. And she said, "What do you think about that?" And I said, "Well, I'm obviously very concerned." And she said, can we get insurance in the secondary market? And I said, well, I think we got a big fire over here, right? There's something that's not being maintained. You should be focusing on that first, and then the insurance is going to work itself out, right? And so sometimes associations, they try to, and I even see this on my board from time to time, sometimes boards forget, hey, this is a business. Like, we need to use licensed and bonded contractors. Because if we're re-roofing our association, we have an obligation to make sure that when we pay this vendor 80 grand or whatever it's going to be, that they do the work properly and that there aren't going to be accidents and there aren't going to be, the contractor, if they fall off the roof, there's insurance. And time again, I see associations trying to be penny wise and pound foolish. And I just want to caution you on that. That's, of course, I own my own business. I'm always looking to trim expenses, but I'm not looking to trim expenses at the expense of quality. And so just keep that in mind when you're making your decisions. Lots of times I see boards come to me after the problem, and I think to myself, I wish they had come to me before. Because if they had come to me and said, hey, we're thinking about hiring this asphalt contractor, and they had their license taken away, but they said it was just like a bad business breakup and it had nothing to do with the quality of the work, and he gave us a bid that was 40 grand less than the other company, and we went with them because we believed him, we believed in him, and now, everything's going wrong on it, right? And now they have no license, we can't go to the Register of Contractors to make a claim, they have no insurance, and now the contract that cost 80 grand is now going to cost 160 to fix. And so just a couple things. Remember, this is a business. You need to consult with your experts. So talk to your insurance agent. They should know you. Talk to your attorney. They should know you too. And run problems by your attorney before they're a problem. I coined the term preventative legal. I like preventative legal. I like it when a client brings that asphalt contract to me and says, what do you think? Because I can tell you right away what that outcome would have been before you make the mistake. And maybe you spend $50 on a phone call with me, but guess what? I just saved you $160,000, right? So rely on your experts, your insurance company, your agent who you buy your insurance from, your attorney, any of your other vendors, ask them what they think, and also don't always go for the low bid. Go for the best value and check references. Providing open communication. I say this a lot, but if you're a good communicator, if your board is a good communicator, you are going to have no problems at your association. That's actually like the tip that could put me out of business, right? Because obviously we get called in when there's problems, but I find that the most successful boards are the ones that always communicate with their owners. They keep them up to speed on what's going on. They address problems head on. They're honest. They don't hide things. They don't try to keep records from owners. They're accessible. They're approachable. They're nice. They give you a straight answer. If you are one of those associations, you're operating at a very high level, and you're not going to have a lot of the hassles that some other associations have, because the homeowners will be happy. And sometimes I hear from the boards that we work with, gosh, we're so disheartened. We had our annual meeting, we had a quorum, but no one came. And I usually say to them when they say that, I say, well, good, you got a quorum, but be happy that your members are happy. Because I've been to a lot of annual meetings where it's standing room only, and people are shouting, and we have a police officer in the back of the room. You don't want that. You want people to be happy coming to your meeting, if they even bother to come. If you're doing a great job, they may not even show up because they know you've got it covered. So think of it from that perspective as well. Preparing an annual budget and adhering to the budget. This has a special place in my heart because I am the treasurer for my association. You really should start thinking about your budget now. Your 2018 budget it should be on your radar at least now. If you're the association's treasurer, maybe your association has a committee where the committee puts together the budget for you, or maybe your management company or your manager does it for you. But my goal as the treasurer this year is to have a really good draft of our budget done by the end of July. And for any of you who are struggling with your budget, I'm happy to share. I have an Excel spreadsheet that I've created for my association, and it helps you compute formulas so you can take last year's numbers, and then you project what this year's numbers are going to be, and we do increases based upon if we think there's going to be increases in services. And you really need to do that right away. You don't need to be, doing that in December is not a good game plan. And also, if you are the treasurer for your association, you should be looking for trends. I was appointed to my board last June, and then I was reelected in December. And so what I've been doing is I've been looking at the trends, since last June. I've got about a good 9 months worth of numbers. And I'm starting to notice that, there are some trends. And maybe we're over budget in certain areas, and then we might be able to use that money somewhere else, or we're under budget in other areas. So there should be some analysis done on this, because you shouldn't just be popping in last year's numbers and saying maybe a 1% increase or something like that. No, your treasurer really should be thinking about what types of projects are we going to have in 2018? Why were we over budget on this line item in 2016 and 17? And then be strategic in your numbers. Because let's face it, when we come up with the budget, we determine what the assessment's going to be to meet the budget, right? And so if we're way off course and we overestimate, we might be having an increase that wasn't necessary, or if we underestimate, we have a cash flow problem. So it's important you have somebody that understands financials working on that. Another thing that you're responsible for is making sure that you have an active corporate status with the Arizona Corporation Commission. All associations in Arizona should be nonprofit corporations to limit liability of their members. And every year you need to file an annual report with the Corporation Commission to have your corporate status renewed. And there's a minimal filing fee of $10, I think. And the problem with this, where people get screwed up on this, is that many years ago, the Corporation Commission used to actually send you the report, which was nice, right? You get it in the mail. It's not easy to not see it. And then they discontinued that due to the cost, and then they just started sending a postcard. And then about 8 years ago, they stopped sending reminders altogether. Okay, so now this is just something you need to have on your radar. Hey, this needs to be filed every year. And so if you want to know, hey, have we filed this? What you should do is Google Arizona Corporation Commission and type in your association's name, click on it, and then it'll give you the corporate status for your association. There's a little button you can click that says check corporate status. If you're in good standing, great. If you're not in good standing, get with your attorney so that your attorney can get you back into good standing quickly. You don't want to let more than 4 or 5 years of annual reports lapse, because what will happen is the Corporation Commission will dissolve your corporation. And what does that mean for you? That means that every owner in the association is individually liable for the debt of the association. And that is a very bad thing. You wouldn't want to have, I'm just one homeowner out of 215, but if my corporate status for my association is terminated or dissolved, what that means is that if the corporation has a cash shortage or a judgment that's entered against them that exceeds any insurance proceeds, they could go after me alone to pay the debt of the corporation. That's not something I'm willing to do. So make sure your board's on that. There is a great little thing that they just enacted about 3 years ago. You can sign up for an email reminder when your annual report is due. And so after you click on your corporate status, there's a little button you can click, please send me an email reminder, and they'll send you a reminder 2 months before it's due. So I would encourage you to sign up for the email reminder. One thing that our firm does as a service to clients at no charge is 2 or 3 times a year, we check the corporate status of all of our clients for free, and we'll send you a letter if you're in bad standing and say, please correct this or have us correct it for you so that you don't get into that problem. Okay, preparing for the annual meeting. Annual meeting is game time. That's your time to shine and show everybody what you're doing. We're going to talk a little bit later in this presentation about some suggestions on how to have a successful annual meeting, but the annual meeting is yours to run as the board, and you want to set it up so that it's run really professionally. Have an approachable and business-like manner. Have an approachable and business-like manner, please. I know when I got off my board and I started having kids and I decided I think I'm gonna be at home with my kids when I'm not out teaching or not out, attending meetings for my clients. So I got off my board for about 10 years and I really kind of got out of it. I did it for a long time before and I needed a break. So when I got back on my board, or when I got back into something, guess what happened? I was upset about something, right? And so I went to a board meeting and I was really nice. I just said, hey, I'm thinking that this isn't a good idea, what you're doing. I heard about it. And, can we talk about this? And the board at that time was really unprofessional to me. And for anybody who knows me, I've worked with a lot of you in the room for many years. So I did get kind of upset about it, and I kept coming to the meetings and I kept bringing it up, but in a nice way. I wasn't a gadfly. And so they continued to, I made document requests. They didn't give me the records. I went around them, and it was an issue with the public bus company. They'd allowed a bus stop on our private property in our association, and I just was concerned about the liability of it. Anyways, so they didn't give me records that they had, and I got them through the bus company, records. And they really didn't treat me very nice, frankly. They wrote a letter about me to everybody in our neighborhood. And my husband is also a lawyer, and I was not having a very good day already. And then he sent me the letter that our president sent out about me. And he said, I wonder who they're talking about. And so, what? Some other people would have, gotten really mad, but I didn't. I just got persistent. I just said enough. Like, this is not how you should be treating people. And I am a reasonable person. I'm making a reasonable request here. And ultimately, persistence paid. I did get the situation resolved, and it's in a way that is no liability for our association. And then I got on the board with all my friends. So, but another point on that, there are going to be times when you serve on your board when you're not going to agree with people. Okay, that happens. But when I got back on the board in June and they appointed me, probably they asked my husband first, of course, because he's the nice one. He said, heck no, I'm not doing that. My wife will do it. And it's good to put things in your rearview mirror. I could have come on the board and had a big chip on my shoulder and been crabby and, well, you did that to me. No. I said, listen, I know we had a little disagreement. Thank you for working it out with me. And let's work together to make our association better. And really, no one's even talked about it again. And I don't even think about it. It's in my rearview mirror. It's tilted up. I'm not looking back. So there are going to be times on your board where you're going to have to do that, where you're going to really want something and you're going to get outvoted, and you're going to have to just put it aside and say, okay, I didn't win on that one. Maybe we'll bring that up again next year. What's a really bad thing that I do see a lot is I see board members get mad and then they quit. That's really not, that's a sign that you are not a good leader if you're doing that, because it just shows if it can't be my way, then I quit. And I always say, sometimes boards will come to me and say, well, what do you think about that? And I'll say back to them, do you think that was a sign of a good board member? Obviously, no. Maybe it was time to get some new blood on the board then. Okay, where do you begin? When you get elected to your board, what should you do? Start, number one, by going back to the basics. Any Vince Lombardi fans here? I'm, of course, a Packer fan because I'm from Wisconsin. So Vince Lombardi said, go back to the basics, right? That's how they won a number of Super Bowls. Start out by reading the association documents and the minutes from the previous year. The documents, it's a quick scan, 10 minutes. Page through them quickly, get the lay of the land on them, CC&Rs, bylaws, articles. And then the minutes, that's going to be the juicy read. You need to spend a little bit of time, at least a minute or two on each month's meeting minutes so you get familiar with what the issues are. One other suggestion, when you get on the board, there are going to be some things that you don't know the backstory on. So be careful not to judge. Listen to all sides. We had something that happened on my board right when I was my first meeting, and somebody came and they were very upset. They seemed very reasonable, and I was kind of thinking, because you got to remember, I was kind of in their seat just a month before, right? And I was thinking, I don't understand why we're not helping this person. Isn't it our job to help them? But then I didn't say anything because when I got elected to the board, I said the first 2 months, I'm not going to say much. I'm going to listen, okay? Because I don't know all the backstories here, so I'm going to listen. So when I got the backstory, then I heard about, the person's prior bankruptcy, that they owed us 15 grand, and I was kind of thinking, okay, this person is not seeming very reasonable to me anymore. So make sure you get the backstory, but then have a mind of your own, obviously, because you need to have independent thought. Make sure that you're in agreement with what the board decided. You want to go through the documents. The CC&Rs define the use of the land, outlines the standards for the community, sets forth the rights, duties, and obligations of individual property owners and the board. Most important document for your association, the CC&Rs. The Articles of Incorporation are the documents that set up your corporation as a non-profit corporation. Also important are the bylaws. Sets forth how to run the association. What are the duties and the terms of the directors? When is your annual meeting? Just the nitty-gritty of, okay, here's how the board operates behind the scenes. The bylaws also set forth the duties and the terms of the officers and directors, sets the fiscal year, annual meeting date, quorum requirements, voting requirements, and provisions for amending the bylaws. And then we have the rules, which are typically promulgated by the board. You also need to know where to find the state statutes. So when you get elected to your board, there's a lot you need to know, right? You're looking at prior minutes, you're looking at the documents. Well, guess what? There's a whole bunch of case law and statutory law that you also need to be aware of. So set up a mentoring program possibly for your board if you have the ability to do that. Have your board attend seminars like this. Go on our website, look at all the free information we have on there on the many different subjects, like the different cheat sheets that we have. There is a wealth of information on our website. At least once a week, somebody reaches out to me and says, your website really helped my association, and that is extremely gratifying for me because we do spend a lot of time teaching and writing. Use professionals to help train board members. I just became general counsel for a very large master plan community in the East Valley, and they have an extremely dysfunctional situation going on out there. I figured it out in the interview when there was almost a fist fight. Anyways, I'm always up for a good challenge. And so what I suggested after they retained our firm was, let's get together and let's have a mediation, basically. Let's air our grievances. Let's get back to the basics of why we are all here. We all have the best interests of the association at heart. We don't all agree on what are the best interests or how to get there, but we all need to work together and not against each other. And we've come in and done that with a number of boards where there's a high level of dysfunction, and it's worked really well. And so I suggest if any of you are scratching your head thinking, oh my gosh, this situation is so bad, I don't want to be on the board anymore, you're probably ready for that, an intervention. And somebody who could come in and give a little tough love. I don't really ever take sides on that. I just call things the way I see them. I mean, this practice area there's a lot to know, but it's not that complicated. So I'm not going to give you 3 different opinions. I'm going to tell you this is what the law says, right? And this is what I suggest you do. And so it's usually pretty simple to go in and resolve disputes that way. And then learn the basics of parliamentary procedure. We're going to talk about that a little bit at the end of the presentation when we talk about how to run a board meeting in an hour or less. Okay, board member responsibilities. Wow, the president. Big job. How many presidents do we have here tonight? Ooh, okay. My condolences. Okay, if your board is not functioning well, I'm sorry, but that could be because you aren't leading the organization well. I know it hurts to hear, but it's good that you have feedback. So the president is really the coach. You are leading the team. And so the president has a lot of different roles, but your primary role is to be the leader, to bring people together, to find solutions, to help with strategic planning, to run the meetings, to oversee. You know, really the president is kind of the top dog when it comes to problems. When they come in, who do they call? Typically the president, right, first. But you don't have any authority above to do anything beyond the approval of the board. So guess what? You have all the responsibility, but you only have one vote, right? That kind of stinks. But that's the way it is. Sometimes boards will delegate authority to the president, especially in the summer months when maybe some of the other board members are traveling. And they'll say, you know, if anything, if there's any maintenance issues, anything up to $5,000, let's say, you can make the decision on it, do what you think is best, and then put it in the meeting minutes so that you protect your president so that when the pool pump breaks, they can get it fixed without having to have an emergency meeting of the board. The president is also the official spokesperson for the board and should work closely with the management company. So people really look to the president as, you know, a key individual in the association. You want to be really careful if you are the president that you aren't making decisions solely, like you're not the only person telling people, oh, you can do that. Don't worry about painting your house purple. I approve it. You can't do that, right? But you are seen as the leader, and you know, people will come to you for advice. You know, the best thing you can say so you don't get yourself in trouble is come to the board meeting and we'll discuss this as a board. But I appreciate you bringing that issue to my attention, and we'll be ready to discuss it at the board meeting. The president is basically responsible for the association's fiscal well-being too. Even though the treasurer oversees the finances, you know, ultimately the dollar stops, or the buck stops with the president. The vice president, you don't have obviously as many roles as the president. You're the substitute. If something happens where the president, you know, decides to resign or has a health issue or, you know, is unable to serve, guess what? You're stepping in. And you're stepping in if the president isn't able to be at a meeting as well. So you need to be up to date on all the issues that are going on at the association so that you can step in at any time. The secretary is the official recorder of the association's records. If you have a management company, typically the management company is handling this for you, meaning like the minutes, keeping the records at their office. If you're a self-managed association, it's you, right? And so I'm the secretary of a couple different organizations that I belong to, and I can give you a really good tip if you are the secretary. If you have a laptop, bring it to the meeting and do the minutes as the meeting is going on. And then before you leave the meeting, send the minutes to everybody. Because if you wait, you know, a month or 2 months or whatever, the minutes you can't remember. Sometimes it takes forever to get them done. And so make sure that if you're the secretary, and also you have to have somebody who's responsible, right? To be the secretary, you don't want somebody who never does minutes, because the minutes are the official record of the association's board. The treasurer is obviously responsible for oversight of the association's funds. The treasurer actually has a very special role in that, you know, you have budget preparation. You should be closely analyzing the year-to-date budget every month. You should be looking at expenses. You should be signing the association's checks. I know management companies hate it when I say that, but I think you should be. If you're the treasurer for your association, my association, we have the president and the treasurer sign all checks. You need to monitor the progress of the annual audit for your association and any financial review that you might be doing with a CPA, a bookkeeper, etc. If the management company is doing a lot of work for you, you still have to oversee them, right? And I've seen a lot of, especially self-managed associations, and I've seen some managed associations too, where there's been a lack of oversight by your treasurer, and that results in embezzlement. And if you think that that can't happen to your association, you are wrong. If you Google HOAs and embezzlement, you will be shocked to find out how many instances there are of this. And so you really want to keep an eye. And even if you're other board members, on our board, I require that the financials go to everybody on the board. Copy the bank statement, copy the budget, copy of everything, the check register, because I don't want anyone to say that I'm hiding anything. And as a board member on your boards, you should be looking at it too. Because if the treasurer's not doing their job, guess what? You're going to get blamed. Because they're going to say, well, we know the treasurer was supposed to be overseeing things, but you're a board member. You should have been looking at it too. And if you look in the newspaper, I'm aware of one association where we had a manager took $580,000 from one association. About a year and a half ago, we had another association, I think it was in North Scottsdale, one of the Troons, where they had a management company that took over $2 million from them. This happens. This happens all the time. And so you really need to be looking out for that. So I'm not trying to scare you. Whenever I teach the class on fraud and embezzlement, we never get a turnout like this because everybody's scared of it, right? It's horrible to think about it, but you have to put safeguards in place to prevent misuse of the association's funds. Okay, let's switch gears. We talked about general responsibilities and roles of the board.